Imagine for a moment. You are standing on the shore of a vast ocean of time. The waves of history are crashing one after another. And in their noise, you can hear the voices of thousands of generations who have looked up to the sky and asked the same question. What will happen next? The same fear and hope flickered in their eyes as in ours. Fear of the unknown, and hope that the end is always followed by a new beginning. And in this silence of the night, when the world seems to stand still in anticipation, you and I will go on an amazing journey to the most intimate corners of the human soul, to the place where our ideas about the end of all things live. Greetings, my dear listeners. Tonight, we will dive into one of the most exciting and at the same time peaceful topics of human thought: the world of eschatology, the doctrine of the last days, which like a bridge connects our fragile present with the mysterious future. Please write in the comments what city you are from and what time it is. I would love to imagine how somewhere in St. Petersburg the rain is pouring through the windows, and somewhere in Yekaterinburg the street lights flicker in the pre-dawn gloom. The word eschatology sounds strict and scientific, but behind it lies something surprisingly human and touching. It is our attempt to look beyond the horizon of time, to understand what awaits not only us, but the whole world. Imagine an ancient man sitting by a fire under a starry sky and telling children that one day everything will change. The sun will go out, the earth will shake, but a new, beautiful world will rise from the ashes. There is no horror in his voice, only a deep understanding that everything in this world flows and changes, like a river that never stops. The philosopher Fyodor Petrov, who studied these ancient narratives, noticed an amazing pattern. He found that no matter in what part of the world people lived, in what epoch they created their myths, their stories about the end of time were remarkably similar. It was as if mankind, separated by oceans and mountains, still listened to the same melody coming from the depths of time. Petrov identified three main parts in this universal symphony of the end. Three acts of a grandiose drama that human imagination has been playing out for thousands of years. The first act is a general decline, not an abrupt precipice, not a sudden catastrophe, but a slow, almost imperceptible slide of the world into chaos. Imagine an autumn forest where the leaves, one by one, turn yellow and fall off. First a few leaves, then whole branches, and now the crowns are almost bare, and only the wind rustles the last, stubbornly held leaves. This is how, according to ancient legends, the end of the world begins, with a quiet, almost imperceptible decay of what seemed eternal and immutable. In ancient India, where the air is filled with the scent of sandalwood and the tinkling of temple bells, sages used to say that the end of an age begins with the disappearance of marriages. Not in the sense of prohibition or law, but in the sense that people no longer feel the need for these sacred bonds. Caste distinctions are being erased, and this is not progress, but a sign that the world is losing its inner structure, its invisible framework. People are becoming less virtuous, but again, not because someone is forcing them to be evil, but because there is simply less room in their hearts for light. Pride, anger, jealousy fill their souls like water fills a cracked vessel, and the rulers who should have been wise fathers of their people turn into tyrants, not because of evil intent, but because they forget what the true power of power is. In the far north, where polar winds whistle between fjords and ice piles up on the shores, Scandinavian storytellers sang of the great winters that precede the end of the world. Fimbulvinter is the winter of winters, a 3-year cold without a single day of thaw. Imagine a world where the snow never melts, where the sun shines but does not warm, where even the sturdiest houses shudder in icy winds. But the cold does not only penetrate houses, it penetrates human hearts. Brother raises his hand against brother. Families fall apart. Honor becomes an empty sound. People forget what it means to be human. And this is worse than any frost. A strikingly similar picture was painted by the followers of Zarathustra in ancient Persia, where desert winds bring the scent of roses and saffron. They, too, spoke of great winters and wars, of the world sinking into darkness, not so much external as internal. But there was always a note of hope in their legends. The darkness would not last forever, and the forces of light would eventually triumph. There is something deeply comforting about these stories. Decline is not unexpected or unfair. It is a natural part of the great cycle. As day turns to night, as winter is followed by spring, so the world must go through a period of decline to be reborn in new beauty. The ancient Armenians even said that at the end of time, people will be smaller in stature. And there is nothing frightening about it. It's just that the world is shrinking, preparing for a new expansion. Imagine a sunset over the vast steppe. The sun slowly sinks to the horizon, and the sky lights up in all shades of red and gold. The shadows get longer, the air gets cooler, and it seems as if the world is falling asleep. But you know that this is not the end. It is just a transition to night, and after night is sure to come dawn. In the same way, decay in eschatological myths is not a judgment, but a preparation for something new and beautiful. Time in these legends flows in a special way. It does not hurry, it does not rush towards catastrophe, but slowly, almost lazily, carries the world towards its transformation. Morals and traditions do not collapse overnight. They melt like snow under the spring sun, leaving behind a wet, ready for new life land. And even the bleakest descriptions of decline are not without poetry, not without that deep wisdom that realizes that the end is always the beginning of something else. In the Hindu tradition, this period of decline is called Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, a time when virtue becomes rare and people live less and less. But even the name of this age does not sound like a curse. There is something of a lullaby in it, a quiet song that time sings, lulling the old world to sleep before its deep slumber. We are, according to the ancient sages, living in this very age, and there is nothing tragic about it. We are simply part of the great cosmic rhythm, participants in the grand dance that the universe is dancing. The next time you see the autumn leaves falling, the lights going out in the windows of houses, the sounds of the city fading in the silence of the night, remember, you are witnessing the same process that the ancient myths described. Not destruction, but transformation. Not death, but sleep before awakening. And in this realization, there is a deep peace that can calm even the most anxious heart. And now, when the world is already tired enough of its slow fading away, when the last gleams of the old order flicker like embers in a cooling hearth, it is time for the second act of the great cosmic drama. If the first act was like an autumn leaf fall, quiet, melancholic, full of light sadness, the second act sounds like the rumblings of thunder on a summer night, not frightening, not destructive, but rather triumphant, like the finale of a symphony that should end just like that, powerfully and majestically. It is the time of the final battle, the time of the terrible judgment, the moment when all the contradictions of the world finally come to the surface and are resolved once and for all. Imagine a theater stage at the moment when all the actors come out for the final act. The footlights are brighter, the music louder, every gesture filled with special meaning. It is the same in eschatological myths. The second act is always the most dramatic, the most spectacular, but also surprisingly just. In the cold fjords of Scandinavia, where the northern lights splash the sky with green waves, the ancient skalds sang of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. What a poetic name for the end of the world. Not doom, not destruction, but twilight, as if the whole cosmos is preparing for sleep. And in this twilight, a grandiose battle is unfolding, which has lasted in the imagination of the northern peoples for many centuries. Imagine a huge serpent that girdles the entire world. Jormungand is the world serpent whose breath poisons the air and whose movements cause waves that can wash away entire cities. He rises from the depths of the ocean, not out of anger or hatred, but simply because it is his time. His scales glisten in the pre-dawn light like 1,000 dark mirrors reflecting the last stars. When it makes landfall, the earth shakes under its weight. But this is not destruction. It is the awakening of the dormant forces of nature. Next to him is the giant wolf Fenrir, whom the gods once bound with magical bonds, but now those bonds are torn like cobwebs in the wind. His eyes burn like 2 red suns, and his breath scorches the air. Again, there is nothing personal in this, nothing vindictive. It's just that times of great change require great strength. Fenrir is not the villain in this story. He is the liberator, the one who breaks the old shackles so that the world can move on. The Aesir gods know their fate. They see the approaching battle in their prophetic dreams, but they do not try to avoid it. There is something deeply moving about this, a wisdom that accepts the inevitability of change. Odin, the All-Father, sits on his 8-legged horse Sleipnir and watches the approaching army of giants and monsters. His one eye, the one that remains after he gave up the other for a sip from the fountain of wisdom, sees not only the present, but also the future. And in that future, he sees not only death, but rebirth. Thor and his hammer, Mjolnir, prepare for the final battle with the world serpent. His red beard flutters in the wind, and his eyes sparkle with determination. He knows that he will defeat Jormungand, but he also knows that he himself will be killed by his poison. And yet, he goes into battle, not out of despair, but out of the realization that his sacrifice is necessary for the birth of a new world. There is no heroism in his act in the modern sense of the word, but a deep acceptance of his role in the cosmic drama. Freyr, the fertility god who once gave up his magic sword for the chance to marry the giantess Gerd, must now fight unarmed against the fiery giant Surtur. His story is full of bitter irony. The one who brought love into the world must perish for choosing love over power. But there is a beauty in this too, a meaning. Love always requires sacrifice, and Freyr realized this from the beginning. And now, the fire giant Surtur rises from Muspelheim, the world of fire, carrying a flame that will purify the earth. His sword burns brighter than the sun, and other fire giants follow him, leaving a trail of molten stone and ash behind them. But even in this image of all-consuming flames, there is no horror. there is the majesty of the element, which does not destroy, but transforms. Fire does not only destroy, it also cleanses, makes room for new growth, transforms dead matter into fertile ash. The battle unfolds on the Vigrid plain, which stretches 100 miles in every direction. Imagine this vast plain under a low northern sky, where the echo of every blow reverberates to the horizon. It's not just gods and monsters fighting here. It's the very principles of existence, the very foundations of the universe. Order against chaos, structure against freedom, past against future. And in this battle, there are no right and wrong. There is only the need for change. In ancient Persia, where the air shakes with heat and smells of rosewater, the followers of Zarathustra imagined the final battle in their own way. They had the forces of light, the Ahuras led by Ahura Mazda, fighting the forces of darkness, the Devas led by Angra Mainyu. But the outcome of this battle is predetermined from the very beginning. Good is bound to triumph over evil, not because it is so fair in the human understanding of justice, but because of the nature of the universe itself. Light is always stronger than darkness. Life is always stronger than death. Love is always stronger than fear. The Zoroastrian texts describe this battle with surprising tenderness. Ahura Mazda does not avenge his adversaries. He frees them from the shackles of delusion. Even Angra Mainyu will eventually be purified and turned to the light. This is not a war of annihilation, but a process of healing the universe, returning it to its original purity and harmony. It is interesting that over time, the image of the last battle evolved into something more personal, more intimate, the Last Judgment. It is no longer a cosmic war between gods and monsters, but an individual meeting of each soul with the highest justice. Imagine a quiet room with a single candle burning and a wise judge sitting at the table who knows the whole truth about your life, not to punish you, but to help you realize who you really are. In the human imagination, the Last Judgment became a kind of measure of social control, but not in the sense in which we understand control today. It was an internal regulator, a voice of conscience that reminded, every deed matters, every word leaves a mark, every thought affects the overall harmony of the world. The sinner will be punished not because someone cruel demands retribution, but because this is the natural law of the universe. Everything returns to its source. This idea of individual responsibility in the face of eternity is wonderfully comforting. It tells us that our lives are not meaningless, that our choices are important, that we are not mere grains of sand in the vast desert of time, but full participants in the great cosmic drama. Each of us is a judge, a defendant, and a witness in this grandiose process of self-discovery of the universe. In the Islamic tradition, the Day of Judgment begins with small signs, those subtle changes in human hearts and societies that herald great change. The rise in blasphemy, betrayals, the destruction of families, the increase in earthquakes. These are not punishments, but symptoms that the world is preparing for transformation. Just as a doctor recognizes illness by its symptoms, so the wise person recognizes by these signs that the time of change is at hand. Then come the great signs, events that can no longer be overlooked. The false Messiah, Dajjal, comes into the world, possessing supernatural powers, but using them to deceive. He is not just a villain. He is a test for human souls, a test of their ability to distinguish between truth and falsehood. Next to him appears the beast Dabat al-Ard, who leads people away from faith. But again, not by force, but by temptation. It is up to each person to choose whom to follow. Smoke envelops the earth. The sun rises from the west instead of the east. The very laws of nature begin to change, showing that the old world has exhausted its possibilities. But even in these cosmic signs, there is no horror. There is the solemnity of the moment when the universe prepares to shed its old skin, like a snake preparing for a new life. The return of Isa, Jesus, to establish peace and justice comes not as conquest, but as healing. He comes not with a sword, but with understanding, not to judge, but to unite a divided humanity. In his presence, religious divisions disappear, not because one religion overcomes the others, but because all see the one truth that has always been hidden behind differences in words and rituals. The tribes of Yajuj and Majuj, Gum and Magog, break free and wreak havoc on the earth. But their invasion is not meaningless. It is the last lesson for mankind about what happens when moral constraints disappear, when force becomes the only law. They come not to win, but to show the inevitability of their defeat. And now, the angel of death, Azrael, by Allah's order, takes away all souls. Imagine this moment, not as a catastrophe, but as the greatest liberation. Each soul can finally leave its temporary shell and return to its source. This is not the end of life. It is the beginning of real life, life without the limitations of the flesh, without the illusions of the material world. The earth and mountains crumble, the stars fall, the heavens open. But all this happens not out of malice or chance, but as the final chord of the great symphony of creation. The universe is shedding its old clothes, preparing to put on new, more beautiful garments, and then comes the moment of resurrection. All the dead rise from their graves, not as zombies or ghosts, but as people who have finally become themselves. Their deeds are weighed on the scales of justice, but these scales are not like human judgments. Here, not only what a person has done is taken into account, but also why he did it, under what circumstances, with what intentions. There are no lawyers and prosecutors. There is only absolute understanding and absolute compassion. On quiet nights, when the world sinks into slumber, and the only sounds are the ticking of the clock and the rustle of the wind outside the window, one can sometimes, almost physically, feel the presence of this higher justice, not as something threatening, but as something inexpressibly wise and understanding, like the gaze of a loving parent who sees all your mistakes, but loves you no less because of it, like the voice of an old friend who knows all your secrets, but stays close. The battles in eschatological myths are never meaningless. They are not out of anger or lust for destruction. They are necessary so that the old can give way to the new. Just as a thunderstorm is necessary to clear the air, just as a forest fire is necessary for young trees to gain access to sunlight, these battles have their own beauty, their own necessity, their own deep meaning. The timing of these events, as Islamic texts wisely point out, is unknown. And there is deep wisdom in this too. Not knowing the exact date of the end makes us live each day as if it could be our last. Not from fear, but from understanding the preciousness of every moment, every breath, every heartbeat. When the ancient storytellers sang of the final battle, there was no fear in their voices. There was the sadness of parting with the old, familiar world. But there was also the joy of anticipating the new that was to be born from this majestic finale. They understood what we sometimes forget, that the end is always a beginning, that death is always a birth, that every sunset promises a new dawn. And then, as the last sounds of battle fade, as the dust settles and the smoke clears, comes the most beautiful moment in the whole eschatological drama, the emergence of a new world. Imagine the dawn after a stormy night, when the first rays of sunlight break through the clouds and illuminate the rain-washed earth. The air is fresh and clean. Dewdrops sparkle on the grass like little diamonds, and the whole world seems just created. This is exactly how the ancient sages saw the earth after the great transformation, newborn, radiant, full of incredible possibilities. This is the third act of the cosmic symphony, and it sounds quite different from the previous ones. If the first act was full of the melancholy beauty of withering, and the second of the grandiose power of the clash of opposites, the third act is pure joy, a hymn to renewal, a song that all suffering and destruction had meaning because it led to the birth of something indescribably beautiful. In the cold northern lands, where after Ragnarok the earth rises from the ocean, green and fertile, the skalds sang of the golden palace of Gimle. Imagine a palace built not of stone or wood, but of light itself. Its walls shine with a soft golden glow that does not blind the eyes, but warms the soul. Its roof is covered not with tiles, but with shimmering scales, each of which reflects one of the stars in the sky. And in this hut, the fallen warriors gather, not for new battles, but for an eternal feast, where the honey never ends and the songs never cease. But Gimlet is not just a resting place for the heroes. It is a symbol of the fact that the best qualities of the old world do not disappear in the fire of transformation, but, on the contrary, are purified and strengthened. The bravery of the warriors, their loyalty to each other, their willingness to sacrifice themselves for the sake of others, all this is transferred to the new world, but without the need for wars, without the pain of loss, without the fear of death. And next to Gimlet, the earth itself is reborn. A new forest rises from the ashes of the fire, where every tree grows exactly where it should be, where every leaf sings in harmony with the wind. Rivers flow with clean, clear water, where you can see the bottom even at great depths. And in these rivers, fish splash, which go into the hands of fishermen, because in the new world, there is no struggle for survival. There is only abundance, which everyone shares with each other. The surviving gods meet on green meadows and remember the old times, not with bitterness, but with a wise smile. They realize now what they did not realize before, that all their mistakes, all their sufferings, were necessary steps on the way to this perfect world. Baldur, the beautiful god of light, returns from the realm of the dead, not as he was before, but renewed, filled with that profound wisdom which can only be gained through death and rebirth. But the Scandinavian myth is only one tune in the great symphony of renewal that mankind has been playing for thousands of years. In other parts of the world, under other stars, people saw the new world in their own way. But the essence was the same. After destruction comes creation. After chaos comes order. After winter comes spring. In the Christian tradition, the new world is called the heavenly Jerusalem, and the descriptions of it in John's Revelation are so beautiful that they are breathtaking, even to those who read them 2,000 years after they were written. Imagine a city whose walls are made of jasper, a stone that shimmers with all the colors of the rainbow, depending on the angle from which you look at it. The bases of the walls are decorated with 12 precious stones: sardis, topaz, chalcedony, emerald, sardonyx, carnelian, chrysolite, beryl, topaz, chrysoprasum, hyacinth, and amethyst. Each stone is not just a piece of jewelry. It is the embodiment of one of the qualities of a perfect soul. The streets of this city are paved with pure gold, but gold as transparent as glass. There is a deep symbolism in this. Material wealth, which in the old world divided people, caused envy and wars, in the new world becomes transparent. Through it, one can see the true essence of things. Gold remains gold, but it loses its ability to dazzle and corrupt. In the center of the city flows a river of the water of life, light as crystal. Its banks are planted with trees of life that bear fruit 12 times a year, bearing new fruit each month. And the leaves of these trees are for the healing of the nations. Imagine such a tree, its branches bowing to the ground under the weight of ripe fruit, and each leaf rustling a song of healing, not from diseases of the body, but from diseases of the soul, from centuries-old offenses, from misunderstandings between nations and people. And there is no temple in this city, because the whole city has become a temple. There is no need for special places for prayer, when every stone, every tree, every street is filled with the divine presence. There is no sun or moon, because the whole city is illuminated by the light that comes not from outside, but from within every being living in it. But the most beautiful thing about the description of the heavenly Jerusalem is that there will be no more weeping, nor crying, nor sickness, for the former things have passed away. Not because pain and suffering are forbidden or suppressed, but because the very causes for pain have disappeared. When everyone understands each other, when everyone has everything they need, when death has been defeated and time has stopped in a moment of perfect harmony, why weep? What is there to mourn for? And here we come to one of the most surprising features of eschatological myths: the realization that the end of the world does not mean the end of everything. In many traditions, time moves not in a straight line from beginning to end, but in a circle, returning to its origin, but on a new level. It is not a simple repetition, but a spiral, where each turn is higher than the previous one. In ancient India, where the odor of jasmine and incense hangs in the air, the sages spoke of yugas, great ages that succeed each other in an eternal cycle. Satya Yuga is a golden age when people live in harmony with nature and each other, when the average lifespan is 100,000 years and human stature reaches 21 cubits. In this age, there is no disease, no old age as we understand it. There is only the wise maturation of the soul. Then comes the Treta Yuga, the Silver Age, when the shadow of imperfection first creeps into the world. People are still virtuous, but no longer to the same extent. Life expectancy is reduced to 10,000 years, height to 14 cubits. The first conflicts appear, the first misunderstandings, but they are still easily resolved by wisdom and compassion. The Dvapara Yuga, the Bronze Age, brings with it great changes. Life expectancy falls to 1,000 years, height to 7 cubits. Virtue and vice appear in equal proportions. The world becomes more complex, more contradictory. Wars appear, but they are still fought according to rules, with honor and justice. Finally, Kali Yuga is the Iron Age, the time in which, according to Hindu tradition, we are living now. Life expectancy is only 100 years. The height of people is 3.5 cubits. Virtue is only a quarter of what it was in the Golden Age. Rulers become tyrants. People forget their duties to the gods and to each other. Families disintegrate, and spiritual traditions become distorted. But even in the darkest description of Kali Yuga, there is no despair, because the sages knew that this is not the end of history, but only one of its chapters. After Kali Yuga, there is inevitably Pralaya, the great dissolution, when the whole world returns to its original state of rest. This is not a catastrophe. It is a rest, a sleep of the universe, during which it gathers strength for a new cycle of creation. Imagine this moment of Pralaya. All forms dissolve, all differences disappear. Only pure consciousness remains, like a boundless ocean without waves. In this ocean, there is no movement, but there is the potential of all future movements. There are no sounds, but there is the potential of all future melodies. There are no colors, but there is the source of all future rainbows. And from this state of rest, a new Satya Yuga, a new golden age, is born. But it does not repeat the previous one exactly. It carries the experience of all the cycles past, all the wisdom accumulated over millions of years. The souls who have passed through the trials of Kali Yuga bring to the new world a depth of understanding that their predecessors did not have. This cyclical view of time is wonderfully comforting. It tells us that even the darkest periods of history are not meaningless. They are a necessary part of the great process of consciousness development. Each epoch, even the most difficult, contributes to the common storehouse of human experience. We find similar ideas in other parts of the world. In the hot lands of Mesoamerica, where pyramids rise to the sky in steps of stone prayers, the Aztecs told of 5 suns, 5 epochs, each of which ended in a great catastrophe. But from the ashes of each, a new, more perfect world was born. The first sun, Nahui Axolotl, the 4 jaguars, ended with the giants, then inhabiting the earth, being eaten by the jaguars. But this was not an act of cruelty. It was a transformation of one life form into another. The giants did not disappear without a trace. Their power passed to the jaguars, and the jaguars became sacred animals, a bridge between the world of men and the world of spirits. The second sun, Nahui Ehecatl, the 4 winds, ended in great hurricanes that blew away the civilization of the time. But the survivors turned into apes, not as a punishment, but as an adaptation, as a way of keeping life alive in the new conditions. And in each monkey, the Aztecs saw a trace of ancient wisdom, a memory of a time when the world was different. The third sun, Nahui Kiauwitl, 4 rain, perished in the rain of fire. But even here, the survivors were not just saved. They became birds, gaining the ability to ascend to the heavens, to approach the gods. Each bird singing at dawn carries in its song an echo of that ancient era. The 4th sun, Nahui Atl, the 4 waters, ended in a great flood that washed away everything that existed. But from this flood, a new world was born, more beautiful and more harmonious. The survivors became fish, creatures that can breathe in the element that destroyed the previous world. And now we live in the age of the 5th sun, Nahui Olen, the 4 movements. The Aztecs believed that this world must end with earthquakes and famine. But they also knew that after that, a 6th sun, even more beautiful, would be born. They did not fear the end of their world. They prepared for it by keeping the sun moving with their rituals and sacrifices. Every 52 years, the Aztecs held the new fire ceremony, a grand ritual that symbolically repeated the creation of the world. On this night, all the fires in the city were extinguished. People fasted and prayed, and the priests at the top of the pyramid carved a new fire from flint. When the flame burst into flame, a jubilant shout spread throughout the valley. The world was saved for another 52 years. In this ritual, there is a deep understanding that keeping the peace requires constant effort, that each generation must rekindle the fire of life. But there is also another understanding, that this fire will never go out completely, that even on the darkest night, a new spark can be carved from the ancient flint of the human spirit. Surprisingly, even in those traditions where time moves not in a circle, but in a straight line, from creation to final judgment, we find the same belief in the possibility of renewal, in the birth of a new world from the ashes of the old. Christian eschatology, for all its apparent linearity, is full of images of cyclical rebirth. The description of the creation of the new heaven and new earth in Revelation is remarkably similar to the account of the first creation in Genesis, as if history were making a complete turn, returning to its starting point, but on an infinitely higher level. On quiet evenings, as the sun sets over the horizon, coloring the sky in shades of gold and purple, you can feel this cyclical nature of time almost physically. Each sunset is a little end of the world, each dawn a little resurrection. And in this daily ritual of death and rebirth of the luminaries, the ancient sages saw a reflection of the great cosmic cycles, a promise that after each end, a new beginning would surely come. But a natural question arises. Where do these remarkably similar images come from in the myths of peoples separated by oceans and millennia? Why do we so often find famines, floods, earthquakes, wars in descriptions of the end of the world? The answer, as is often the case with the deepest truths, is both simple and complex. These myths were not born in the ivory towers of philosophers, nor in the silence of the libraries of sages. They were born in the thick of human life, amidst real suffering and real hope. Imagine an ancient village somewhere in Palestine in the 1st centuries AD. The sun has been scorching the land for months on end. The rains have not come, and the wells are drying up one by one. People look at the yellowing fields, at the thinning cattle, at the faces of their children, who are becoming more and more withered every day. And in these days of despair, a traveling preacher tells them of the coming kingdom of God, where the vine will bear 10,000 clusters of vines, and each cluster will bear 10,000 berries, and each berry will yield 25 measures of wine. These fantastic pictures of abundance, which Papias of Hierapolis recorded from the words of the disciples of the apostles, were not mere fantasy. They were a response to real hunger, to real need. When a person feeds on barley cakes and water for months on end, the dream of an endless abundance of wine and honey becomes not just a pleasant dream, but a vital hope, the light at the end of the tunnel that helps him not to give up. In the Roman Empire, Famine was a constant companion in the lives of ordinary people. A bad harvest in Egypt meant a shortage of bread in Rome. Drought in Gaul meant riots in provincial towns. And every time their stomachs churned with hunger and their children cried themselves to sleep at night, unable to sleep because of the emptiness inside, people looked up to heaven and prayed for a time when there would be enough bread for everyone, when no one would go to bed hungry. Natural cataclysms also left a deep trace in human memory. Some scientists believe that the biblical story of the flood could be based on a real natural event, a rapid rise in the water level in the Black Sea about 7,500 years ago. Imagine people who lived on the shores of what was then a freshwater lake. They fished, grazed their cattle on green meadows, built houses, and raised their children, unaware that somewhere far away, the melting glaciers were already preparing a terrible surprise for them. Then, one morning, the earth shook. A crack in the rocks formed, and the salty waters of the Mediterranean Sea rushed into their peaceful lake with the force of 1,000 waterfalls. In a matter of days, the water level rose tens of meters, flooding everything that people thought was eternal and immutable. Those few who managed to escape on the uplands or in boats forever remembered this horror, this helplessness in the face of the furious elements. And the memory of this catastrophe has been passed on from generation to generation, adding new details, turning into a myth, but retaining at its core the original truth about the fragility of human existence. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, plagues, all these catastrophes left their imprint on the collective memory of mankind. And when prophets and seers painted pictures of the end of the world, they drew colors from this bitter memory, from this experience of helplessness before forces that man can neither understand nor control. But eschatological myths were not only a way of coping with trauma, they became a powerful tool of social struggle, a way of giving meaning to suffering and motivating people to action. The idea of the coming end of the world and a just judgment was particularly attractive to those who suffered injustice in the world. Peasants oppressed by feudal lords, slaves dreaming of freedom, all those who saw the rich and powerful flouting the laws of God and man. Imagine a serf peasant somewhere in the Russian countryside in the 17th century. He gets up before dawn, works on the Bar's land until dusk, gives half of his harvest to the landlord, and the other half to the state in the form of taxes. His children walk around in tattered clothes. His wife ages prematurely from constant malnutrition and hard work. And now, this man is told that the last judgment is coming soon, that everything will be turned upside down, that the last will be first, and the first will be last. This news is not just comforting. It gives him strength to survive, hope for justice, faith that his suffering is not in vain. In 17th century Russia, eschatological ideas became particularly evident during the church schism. Patriarch Nikon, who reformed worship, seemed to the old believers not only wrong, but he seemed to them the embodiment of the Antichrist. Changes in the way of the sign of the cross, from the two-fingered to the three-fingered sign, were perceived not as a technical correction, but as a sign of the approaching end of times. After all, how can one change something that has been consecrated by centuries of prayer, that has been cemented by the blood of martyrs? The old believers called the three-fingered sign of the cross satanic, seeing in it a symbol of the worship of three demons. In their eyes, the Nikonian reforms were not an attempt to bring Russian Orthodoxy closer to Greek Orthodoxy, but the beginning of the spiritual catastrophe that must precede the second coming. And this belief gave their resistance a special strength and desperation. For they were not just fighting for the old rights, they were fighting to save the world from the last temptation. The old believers actively participated in peasant wars and uprisings, seeing in them the struggle of the forces of light against the forces of darkness. Stenka Razin, Emelian Pugachev. These leaders of popular uprisings were perceived by many old believers as forerunners of that king of the poor, that just ruler Michael, who should come before the end of the world and establish the kingdom of God on earth. In their view, these wars were not just a struggle for a better life. They were part of the great cosmic battle between good and evil. When the old believer communities went into the forests, when they burned themselves in log cabins, preferring death to the Nikonian temptation, they were guided not by despair, but by the belief that their sacrifice would help to preserve the true faith until the coming of the Antichrist. Their self-immolations had their own terrible logic. It is better to die a righteous man than to live in a world ruled by evil. And this tradition of eschatological thinking did not disappear with the end of the schism. It continued to live in Russian culture, manifesting itself in the most dramatic moments of history. In our time, new religious movements actively use eschatological ideas to interpret contemporary events, geopolitics, urbanization, technological progress. For many of these movements, Russia seems to be the chosen country, the place where the final battle between good and evil will take place. Imagine a map of the world in the imagination of a modern Russian mystic. Most of the planet is immersed in the darkness of materialism and godlessness. But in the center of this darkness shines an island, Russia, the last fortress of true spirituality, the last hope of mankind for salvation. Some believe that after the coming wars and cataclysms, there will be 144,000 righteous people left in Russia, a number taken from the Revelation of John, which speaks of the sealed servants of God. These righteous people, according to the prophecies, will pray for the granting of a righteous king to Russia, who will establish just rule on earth and prepare the world for the second coming. A special role in these perceptions is played by local shrines, places that are supposed to protect believers from the power of the Antichrist. The Divyevsky Monastery in the Nizhny Novgorod region, where the venerable Seraphima of Diveyev ascended, is perceived as a place of special protection of the Mother of God. The Ural Mountains are seen as a natural fortress where one can hide from persecution. The Solovetsky Monastery on the White Sea is seen as the last stronghold of true orthodoxy in a world gripped by apostasy. For many modern eschatological movements, the main enemy is the city, the embodiment of technocratic civilization, a symbol of mankind's departure from the natural, God-ordained way of life. They see Moscow as the new Babylon, a city where the Antichrist rules, where human souls are seduced by the false glitter of material prosperity. The underground utilities of modern cities, subways, sewers, heating mains, are perceived as a prototype of hell, as a network of tunnels leading straight to the devil. This has its own poetic truth. Indeed, when you go down into the Moscow metro at rush hour, when you see the tired, alienated faces of people illuminated by the cold light of fluorescent lamps, it is hard not to feel something infernal in this picture. The terrorist attacks of the late 90s, the explosions in Moscow homes, the hostage-taking in the Dubrovka Theater Center, were interpreted by many as punishment for the moral decay of society, as a sign that the time of testing had already begun. In every catastrophe, in every tragedy, they saw the fulfillment of ancient prophecies, the approach of the day when everything secret would be revealed. But the most amazing thing about modern eschatological movements is how easily they adapt ancient images to new realities. Instead of the dragons and beasts of Revelation, they speak of computer networks and artificial intelligence. Instead of the seal of the Antichrist on the forehead, they talk about microchips and digital passports. The internet is seen as a net in which the devil traps human souls, and social networks as a way to control people's minds. And in this adaptation, there is a deep regularity, the human need for meaning, for understanding that what is happening around us is not accidental, that history has a direction and purpose. Eschatological thinking gives people the key to understanding the most complex and frightening events of our time, fitting them into the familiar pattern of the struggle between good and evil. Nuclear weapons become the fire that must cleanse the earth before the new world comes. Environmental catastrophes are a sign that the old world has exhausted its possibilities. The coronavirus pandemic is interpreted as one of the plagues that precede the end of times. In every crisis, in every problem of modernity, the eschatological consciousness sees the confirmation of ancient prophecies. And you know what? There's nothing strange or pathological about it. The idea of apocalypse doesn't go away because it answers a fundamental human need, the need for hope. When the world seems too unfair, too cruel, too meaningless, the eschatological myth whispers in our ear, "Bear with it a little longer. This is all temporary. Soon everything will change for the better." This idea evolves with mankind, finding new reasons and new means for its manifestations. Instead of gods and the flood, we now have the internet and nuclear weapons. But the essence remains the same: the belief that every end is followed by a new beginning, that every winter is followed by spring, that every night is followed by dawn. On quiet evenings, when the sounds of the big city fade away, when the lights in the windows of the houses go out, when the world sinks into that special silence that only happens at night, one can sometimes feel the presence of that eternal hope. It does not live in the books of the prophets or in the speeches of preachers, but in the very depths of the human heart, in that corner of the soul that knows that all sorrows are temporary and joy is eternal. Perhaps instead of giving in to anxiety about the coming end of the world, we should pause and take care of the present, to build a better future, not by waiting for disaster, but by patiently creating. By a kind word, a helping hand, an understanding that each of us can be the light that will dispel the darkness of the end times. And with that, my dear listeners, let me end our night journey through the world of eschatological myths. We have traveled a long way, from ancient Hindu yugas to modern Russian prophecies, from Scandinavian Ragnarok to Aztec suns, from Christian Revelation to Islamic Day of Judgment. And everywhere we found the same thing: the unquenchable human belief that every end is followed by a new beginning. Good night to you, wherever you are, in a bustling metropolis or a quiet village, in Russia or abroad. May your dreams be lucid and your awakening be joyful. And remember, every new day is a small apocalypse, a small revelation of how beautiful this world is, despite all its imperfections. See you in the next night wanderings. Take care of yourself and those you care about.